What up, man?
Hello there.
How are you?
Oh, I'm running around a bit like a headless chicken trying to get 10 kilos worth of baggage to last me for 3 weeks in an Australian winter.
Oh, that's right. You're going from the sunny shores of Greece to the wintry cold of Australia.
I am, and I'm trying to do it in a way where my preferred airline providers have failed me, have not been able to provide me with a ticket. And so I have to go on a slightly budget airline and I have a 10 kilogram limit. I think I'm getting there. Welcome to the Pilote podcast. I'm David Fuller, and this week I'll be joined by my regular co-host Corey Smith to talk about the wonders of space, augmented reality, and a deep dive into LinkedIn.
What's got you going to Australia? Is it just going home to see family?
Yeah, I haven't been home for 3 years. Yeah, the pandemic is. Australia locked its borders, wouldn't let anyone in or out for a couple of years.
I didn't realize it had been that long.
The wonders of being an expat. But like I said, the Australian carrier Qantas, impossible to get a ticket. I don't think I can't even log into their website, let alone book a ticket. Emirates, which would be my airline of choice, is currently insanely expensive.
Wow.
So I'm going to go with Scoot.
Never even heard of Scoot.
Scoot is the budget airline or low-cost airline operated by Singapore Airlines.
Okay.
I've done some short flights with them within Asia. So I've done sort of Singapore to KL, which I think was about 30 minutes. But this has been my first long-haul flight with Scoot. Yeah, it's a long trip. It's about 30 hours door to door.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I'm currently trying to fill my iPad full of content because there's also no in-flight entertainment.
Oh, oh my gosh, for 30 hours.
Yeah, I'm currently trying to fill my iPad full of stuff I can either read, listen to, or watch.
So what's on the agenda today, my friend?
Well, I thought we'd start with something nice, something uplifting and inspiring. I don't know whether you've seen the pictures coming out of the Webb telescope from NASA.
Oh, I sure have. I sure have.
Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool. I saw the pictures, and I also saw Neil deGrasse Tyson's reaction to the pictures. Have you seen the video of him?
No, I haven't seen that bit. But
he's freaking out.
Yeah, and rightly so. There's some cool stuff. You know, they spent a lot of money. I don't know how much that project cost, but it was a significant amount of money, I imagine, to get that thing into space. But anyway, I just thought it'd put our little earthly squabbles into some perspective, you know?
I think I love that stuff. And I'm sure you do. I subscribe to all the NASA, like Instagram, and I love that stuff I love science personally.
It's kind of mind-blowing though, right? I mean, you kind of think that all these images that we're seeing now, you know, even though light travels at whatever speed it travels at, it means that some of these pictures are of things that may not even exist anymore.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's hard to comprehend, but wow,
it's good, and it's a nice little, say, for science geeks, and there are still some science geeks. You know, Professor Brian Cox sells out stadium tours of, you know, talking about atomic quantum physics. So there's still hope for science, even though it's trying to be quashed by a loud minority, I think we'd call them.
Yes, they are the loud minority. And my goodness, they are loud. But anybody who is listening who hasn't seen it, I would encourage people to go out and look at the photos.
Yeah,
they are quite stunning.
Staying on a sort of scientific note, I've got a couple of news stories that I just sort of picked up during the week. Virtual reality is obviously this long-term holy grail that people are sort of saying, you know, we'll immerse ourselves in a holodeck style reality. But, you know, we're way away from that. And we're so far away. I mean, there's a story this week about the numbers in some of the metaverse. What's the plural of metaverse?
Good question. I don't know.
Just
The
metaverses.
megaverse.
There were some numbers came out this week. I haven't verified them or seen where they were, but they're I've sort of said that some of these places seem completely empty, and based on these numbers, which are so much lower than I thought. Again, don't know where these came from. I'll put a link in the show notes to the tweet and the source. But they're saying that a place like the Sandbox has got basically 1,200 active users a day.
Yeah.
And a Decentraland's sort of got less than 1,000 users.
Less than
a day.
1,000. Yeah.
So what I'm trying to understand is why are brands, except for pure PR purposes, why are brands announcing they're spending millions of dollars buying land in a place that has 1,000 users a day? I mean, that's less than my local mall, significantly less than my local mall.
Because of the hype. It's the hype cycle, man.
Selling the sizzle.
It's constantly talked about. It's the metaverse. It's the metaverse. It's the metaverse. It's the future.
But this is
it's all ball bearings nowadays.
Sometimes you need some reality checks. And as a fact check, this was an interesting tweet because I knew it was low. I didn't know it was that low. We've had more people listen to this podcast.
Well, yeah, but you see where the number, and also in this tweet, they have Fortnite and Roblox, which is where they have significant numbers. But of course.
And I think some of the Web3 crowd like to say that Roblox is Web3, but it's not really. It's not really a metaverse. It's kind of a metaverse.
It's metaverse adjacent.
Saw a really interesting article this week about augmented reality contact lenses. And the most interesting part of this story wasn't the fact that using contact lenses for AR was cool, which I think it is, but how they get power to them. It's apparently the biggest challenge for augmented reality contact lenses is how you power them.
Right.
Medical grade micro batteries, apparently, is the answer.
Where does the micro battery live? In the edge of the lens?
It's a good question. I mean, it's got a 5 gigahertz radio transmitter as well, and an accelerometer, and a gyroscope, and
I see that,
and a magnometer to track eye movement. I mean, that's pretty cool. Basically, got all the sensors that sit within a smartphone sitting within a contact lens. It'll take a while to go into production, but some pretty funky stuff happening on the AR side of things. And I think it's got a lot more application and real world usefulness than some of the 3D virtual worlds.
It's funny because they have, there's been Google Glass.
Yeah.
There were the Snapchat glasses, now Ray-Ban makes a pair of glasses.
Well,
and nobody has seemed to have really kind of captured the imagination.
But the thing that killed Google Glass was the thing that sort of is killing the metaverse at the moment is it's on the cool versus creepy continuum. It's more creepy than cool.
Yeah, you're right. Well, and Apple's coming out with glasses now, right?
Yeah, apparently they've been working on them for a while. So
is their thing augmented reality?
If you stick an Apple badge on it, there'll be a bunch of people who'll buy it just because it's got an Apple badge on it.
Yes, I agree with that.
There's still that, is somebody using this to do something a bit dodgy? Are they taking video in places they shouldn't be taking video? Are they
right?
Whatever. There's some really interesting privacy issues around it, and maybe Apple's the only brand, one of the only brands that can, as they moved along that continuum from creepy a little to a bit more cool. So AR as a concept has been around for a long, long time. We talked about it in our episode on the reality continuum. But there were some figures out this week, which I saw. I think they're from Statista, which shows that we're not talking 10 years away. We're not talking 30 years away. We're talking 2022. There's 1 billion users of AR using existing mobile devices. So I guess that includes things like maybe Google Maps, maybe, I don't know, they haven't exactly defined what AR means in this sense. I know that there's some quite cool e-commerce applications that allow you to see what your chosen paint color looks like on your walls, and what your new action figure would look like on your desk.
Right.
So I imagine that's some of the increasing applications of AR right now. Apparently there's about 1 billion users right now, 2022, using AR, using a mobile device.
I'll be honest with you. In the last 5 years, maybe I've seen more business applications with AR that are interesting, like just in general, not even that are interesting, than I have in consumer.
Yeah, I mean,
lot,
I went through a curve. I downloaded a bunch when it first became a sort of hype on the hype curve, and then I got rid of them because they weren't that great. I've got a couple that I use my phone for example, doing floor plans.
Yep.
So, measuring the length and widths of rooms and connecting them together and turning them into 3D plans. I've done that.
Yeah, we were doing that like 4 years ago. We had a client that'll remain nameless that builds refrigeration systems. Like when you go into the grocery store and all the big, where they put the vegetables or like the frozen foods.
Yeah.
And they had a thing that so they sold that to like the grocery stores or Walmart or Sam's Club, and they could go in and you could hold an iPad up and you could see if the units that they sold fit on the floor.
Right.
And you could plan it. And then several years later, we built a thing for their repair people, their maintenance people, that you could go in with an iPad and look at the guts of the refrigeration system with the camera, and it had an overlay and it could tell you how to repair the refrigeration system, like what the pieces were in the engine, essentially.
Yeah.
And it could be like, hey, here's where this is, and this is the part you need to replace. And I thought that was pretty cool. And we've done that in the oil business on oil rigs, for replacing parts on an oil rig for mechanical pieces.
We spent a bunch of time on this on our reality episode. So if you didn't hear that one, go back and have a listen to the different types of reality that are happening right now. But I think this is just another proof or another data point that says that AR is going to be a lot more interesting than VR, especially in the short term.
Yeah.
So, there was something in the news in the last week about Elon Musk and Twitter. I'm not really going to dwell on that, except to say that I do see this a bit like the last US election, and there are some massive implications for contract law if he manages to win the court cases and walk away from this deal. Because by all accounts, this was a binding deal that he had with Twitter. And unless he can prove that contract was broken, then he really should be not necessarily allowed to walk away with the $1 billion breakup fee. And there's many people, including Scott Galloway, who I listen to a lot, who are basically saying that for US contract law to stay in place, what probably should happen is that he should be facing a bill, which is the difference between what he offered and what the company is worth today. I think today would be around $28 billion. Again, there's a lot of fanboys on one side and not a lot of people looking at the long-term implications of what it might mean for something as basic as the economy, the stock market, contract law, mergers and acquisitions, if he manages to somehow squirm his way out of this contract. All right, I'm going to move things along quickly in this episode because I'm going to have to go and finish my packing and everything else.
Yes, we have to get you moving.
So that was our little roundup of some of the things I saw this week. As I said, the best one was the NASA stuff. If you're into space, even in a little way, just go and check out the web photos, and they're really nice. Download them as a wallpaper for your desktop if you're into that kind of thing. Big topic this week. I've been thinking about LinkedIn for a number of reasons, but some of the reasons are that LinkedIn is becoming just a larger part of my day. Switched a lot of my attention away from Twitter to LinkedIn, and it seems like a lot of my peers are also doing that. So a lot of we've mentioned this in passing, that many people who used to use Twitter as a professional conversation tool, engagement tool, have taken those conversations away from Twitter and are starting to have those conversations on LinkedIn instead. And I think there's some good reasons for that. LinkedIn is a trust-based system. It's a professional networking platform, and therefore you are what you say, and you can say something on Twitter as an anonymous kind of troublemaker, and that has different ramifications to being in a public square and a professional public square where your professional reputation is on the line. I'll come to reputation in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I feel like LinkedIn is changing, and not all this changes for good. It's starting to become a bit Facebooky, a bit TikToky, a bit Instagrammy. So my open question is this beginning of the end of the platform?
Well, it can be. Well, there's always with these platforms, there's always a fear of like, oh, well, this other platform is doing this, and this is the hook that's causing this platform to rise in popularity, right? So you've certainly seen that with Instagram and TikTok. Instagram, and we've talked about this in the past, is like, I think we've all kind of abandoned Facebook and moved it to Instagram. And now you see Instagram starting to become more like TikTok.
Oh, a lot
right?
more. I'm starting to see a lot of recommended posts in my Instagram feed that I just don't want to see. And it's like, because you watched X, we're showing you Y, even though you haven't shown any interest in it in the past. And then if I slow down and watch that particular recommendation, it'll show me 10 more. I'm like, I don't want you to be TikTok. If I wanted to be on TikTok, I'd be on TikTok.
These brands, these platforms, these whatever you want to call them, forget why people chose them to begin with. We use LinkedIn because it's LinkedIn and what LinkedIn is and what it provides. We go to Instagram. I don't go to Instagram to see another TikTok. If I wanted to be on TikTok, I go to TikTok.
Right.
So I go to LinkedIn precisely for the things that you mentioned earlier. It's a professional network, one where you can't really be anonymous, but it's a professional network. And I'm sure you've seen me scold people for posting non-professional posts on TikTok.
There seems to be a trend at the moment which sort of starts every post with, I maybe shouldn't be posting this, but I'm going to anyway.
Right. And then I'm like, this is not an appropriate platform for this kind of posting. And I'm not ashamed to do that, because I don't feel that that's what LinkedIn is, the safe harbor for us to do professional networking and that's what it's designed for. And it needs to remain that.
Yeah. So,
right.
So I'm going to back up a bit, because I've been on LinkedIn since day one, if not day one, very, very early on.
Very early.
Because
sure.
I was a member of two other professional networking sites that have gone, or three actually, that have since disappeared. 6 Degrees. I don't know whether 6 Degrees was professional or whether it was more Facebooky, but it's obviously based on the old quote, 6 degrees of separation. You can get between two people between 6 other people. There was another one which I can't remember, but it was much bigger than LinkedIn, and then LinkedIn overtook it. It was an American-based professional networking site. And there was one in the UK which was very popular called eCademy, which I was also a member of. And that predated LinkedIn, but LinkedIn just got critical mass.
Right.
Network effect, if you will. A little bit of history. I'm going to go way back in time, children. Once upon a time, professionals would collect business cards and contact and keep them in analog form. A little black book, if you will. Although I found out today that the phrase "little black book" goes back to the 1400s.
Oh my goodness!
And was effectively the names that the king wanted to kill. Younger listeners might know what a Rolodex is. Do you remember Rolodexes, Corey?
Of course.
I'm too young to remember Rolodex. I had to Google it to look up the spelling. But I have seen one. I've seen them on people's desks. So sure. Basically you take the business card, you stick it in this rotary wheel, and it
had a wheel on it, and you turned it.
Spins through the business cards. Yeah. Okay. So then that was replaced by the super trendy 80s Filofax. Did you have a Filofax?
No.
It was a glorified diary, but it had designer versions. There's even a scene or two in American Psycho. It was in the book anyway.
Where it was the book.
So it's a diary with a leather cover, and it had a contact section in it. But if it was a very virtue signaling kind of diary called a Filofax, very 80s. So after that came the PDA, which is a digital version of the Filofax. I had a Palm 5, still to this day, one of the best devices I've ever owned.
I had many of those. Like I had a Newton, which was a big, gigantic thing, Apple Newton, right?
Yeah.
And then the Palm Pilot. I had many Palm Pilots.
Yeah, I had top of the range Palm Pilot at a Palm.
Yeah, always had the newest Palm Pilot, and then that kind of morphed into the BlackBerry.
The PDAs went away, and the smartphones killed the PDA.
Yeah, and that was like kind of the beginning of this because then there was the like, remember they had all the pagers that became the texting pagers, like the Sidekick.
Yeah, I've left pages out of this particular list.
Yeah, like those, they don't count. But then it became the BlackBerry, and then we went into smartphones around 2007 or something like that.
But all of these things required manual input of data. So you went to a conference, you swapped business cards, and then someone had to enter the details of those cards into some sort of database, which is now maybe called a customer relationship management system, CRM. So whether that was a PA or whether that was you yourself, you had to take the pile of business cards that you collected at the conference or the trade show, and you had to manually type all those business card details into a spreadsheet or some other type of system. And the biggest thing that LinkedIn actually fixed for me initially was that people don't always stay in the same job. So you collect someone's business card and you maybe fall out of touch with them, and they change jobs or they move companies or they do something different, and suddenly your contact details for them are completely out of date, and you've got absolutely no way of contacting them. So LinkedIn effectively changed that and became connected address book, kind of like a Facebook for business. That's what its biggest cool feature was. Arguably, LinkedIn's purpose now, primary purpose, is to develop and manage your professional network.
Yes. I would even argue now it's not only maybe you mentioned it like a de facto customer relationship management system. It's also a job application, right?
Yeah, and that's always been a kind of element to it. There's a lot of people who've only ever used LinkedIn when they're looking for a job or they're looking for candidates. So it's an online CV. And so I
don't have a resume anymore. I haven't gotten a job with a resume in probably 8 years. Everybody has found me through LinkedIn.
Yeah. But that's also part of networking,
That's true.
One of the reasons why you develop and manage your network is so that you have options when you are looking for, new roles or to hire
that's
people.
Right.
That's part of the networking element of it. This is where trust and reputation come into play on LinkedIn, and I think this is one of the areas where LinkedIn seems to be slightly slipping. And I might have a very old school view of it, but in my view of the world, by connecting with someone on LinkedIn, I'm effectively giving them a tacit or implied recommendation, and that their behavior and reputation has some impact on mine. Now, I know that's not how some people see it, but certainly that's how it was originally developed. And LinkedIn used to actually say in its sort of onboarding, don't accept a connection from anybody unless you've met them, unless you can trust them. Slightly different, again, to Twitter in that sense. So that's why I don't connect with people who just sends me a request. What's your position on that one?
I think that, and I think, and I'll admit, I wouldn't say fell victim to this, but like when I first started using LinkedIn, which has been quite a long time ago, like probably certainly early 2000s, I collected people, right? Like I have a lot of network connections because that felt like that was the thing you did, right? You wanted to grow your network, so you connected with as many people as possible. But as I began to leverage or understand the power of the network and creating a network and using that in the ways that we have now described, because I was professionally immature at that time.
Right.
I tend to lean more towards the way you feel now, which is I'm much more selective about who I connect with or who I allow to connect with me.
Yeah.
Because I think that is a kind of testament, like or like a recommendation, right? Oh, that person's connected with Corey, so at this stage of my career, I get things from people that I know personally and professionally. They're like, oh, hey, you're connected to this person on LinkedIn. Do you know them? What can you tell me about them?
Right.
And I'm like, well, I really don't know that person. That's somebody I connected with like 9 years ago, and I really don't know them. So like I've begun to kind of call some people out. I do tend to agree with you now, but that came with a maturity of use of the platform, understanding the power of networking, because at this stage, LinkedIn is a essential part of my professional persona and my professional
and your personal brand,
business.
personal and professional brand.
Personal brand. I have gotten every job that I've had in probably the last 8 years, maybe 10 years, through LinkedIn, through a network connection, connect with people that when I do speaking, and I get speaking engagements and do writing things and do collaborative things, all through connections I make on LinkedIn. I do a lot of posting, as you know, as do you, and do a lot of writing. So it's very important to me and my brand now. So I'm much more protective about how I use it and how and who I connect with now than I ever was in the past, only because I understand it now. And I think there's a lot of people on the platform that use it a little bit more in a more pedestrian way than we use it, that don't understand it, that are a little bit more loose with the platform. Kind of going back to what I was saying before, that like that make those posts. It's like, I don't know that I should be posting this here, but I'm going to anyway, not really understanding what that means.
We can come back and we'll have some tips after the break. Thanks for listening. If you haven't subscribed, you can do so using your favorite podcast app. You'll get the latest episodes first. Also check out our YouTube channel. We are adding more full-length episodes as well as bonus content. You can also get in touch via our social media or our website. Now for some LinkedIn tips.
And we're back.
We are back. We've been talking about LinkedIn. Interestingly enough, they changed their features a bit. There's a whole lot of new stuff, obviously, but they do make some changes. One that I've noticed recently, which I don't know whether you've seen, I don't know how new this is, to be honest. I've only noticed it recently, that you can now follow someone without connecting to them. And There's an option to make this the default. So if someone comes to your profile, the button option will be follow, and people will have to go searching a bit more in the menu, in the little dot menu, in order to connect with you. If you don't want random people to connect with you, but still allow them to engage with your content, you can set that setting to follow as a default instead of connect, which some people may not know of. So I've got some rules. Yeah, I'm old school, like I said. If I haven't met you, I haven't worked with you, then I'm unlikely to connect with you. There are exceptions. For example, if you know 10 people that I am also connected to and know and trust, then I'll probably accept your connection request because of that sort of implicit trust that we were talking about earlier on, implicit recommendation. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn and you haven't met me, let me know what you want. Just at least let me know why.
Right. Send a message.
Send me a message with the connection request that says, hey, and I don't mind if you're trying to sell me something. I may need that. That's not a problem at all, you know? So honest answers include, you want to sell me something, you want to get to my network, you want to buy something from me, you want to recruit me, you want to collaborate with me on a specific project. They're all fine, right? I don't mind, as long as you just provide me some context as to why you're sending me the request, instead of just saying, I want to connect with you, but I'm not going to tell you why. And then 5 minutes later, pitch me. Useless reasons include, we work in the same business.
Right.
It's kind of like a who cares thing for me, and without any note or context, although this is a flaw in the mobile app. Often I've found that if I connect with someone on the mobile app, it doesn't give me the option to add a message, but you can always follow up with a message. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I always tend to send a message. I'll admit, I will connect with people that I don't know, that are not in my network, that are not connected to people I know. If I read something that they've written, an article or a post, and I want to have a conversation with them and get to know them.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad.
But again, if you put that into context, so I connected with a guy who's very vocal in the Web3 space. He posts a lot. He comments a lot. And I agree with his point of view. I've never met him. I've got I don't know him, but I find myself reading a lot of his stuff and agreeing with a lot of his stuff and commenting a lot of his stuff. And so I sent him a connection and said, hey, I love your point of view. I love what you're saying. It'd be great to connect because I, like to discuss collaborations maybe in the future or whatever else.
Right.
There was a context for it. And it wasn't just a cold out of the blue connection. I'm sure he'd seen that I'd been responding to his posts and talking with him. So if I know someone has been reading my content and commenting on my content for a while, then if they send me a connection request, I'll be more likely to accept it than someone who's got the title business development manager who hasn't given me any context.
Yeah, that's the key, context. And then I will further say that I will accept connection requests from people, again, with context, that work in the field. And I use air quotes. That field can be broad because I get people that work in broadly in digital, sometimes in the experience field, sometimes in innovation or transformation. They're young, they're new, they read our they hear our podcast, or they read content that I post, or they read stuff that I reply to, and they want to connect with me and they want to have a conversation. I love talking to people. I love conversation and collaboration, and I will accept those.
Yeah, again, collaboration. If someone is straight out, hey, I like your point of view. I'm new to the industry. I'd love to, pick your brain about topic X. Then I'm happy to do that. It's
right. Not everybody's like us.
Yeah.
But yes, I will do that. But that's the exceptions for me personally.
Yeah. There's always exceptions. So I've got some assorted tips. It's funny. My first tip coincides with something you posted today. Is this just happenstance?
Ironically,
because I didn't see your post until after I'd written this. And
I posted that, and I didn't see this until now.
So we've been
I took those pictures yesterday, and I was like, I got to come up with a post to go with this picture, and that was my idea. It was just kind of coincidental.
So my biggest tip that I came up with, and I think this is important in just professional life as well as LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is a mirror of your professional life anyway. So my top tip, and again, this is Corey's on the same page with me here. We can discuss it in a sec. Is just be authentic.
100%.
People do business with people. You might have different business persona to your personal persona, but you want to be true to your personal brand and values. And that's true if you're using LinkedIn as a recruitment tool, whether you're using it to get a job, whether you're using it to promote yourself or your company, whether you're using it to become a thought leader, whatever you're using LinkedIn for, you will get a ton more value out of it if you are authentic and true to yourself, rather than trying to create a persona that you think people are wanting to see.
Right. And, that's one of the things I admire about you most, is that you are authentically you all the time, good, bad, or indifferent. And I think that's so important, because you're going to do business with somebody in whatever respect, whether it's collaborate, you're going to work for somebody, you're going to work with somebody. You're going to be you eventually. It's going to come out. They need to know what that is. And so you and I are similar in many respects, in that we are not afraid to share our opinions and to be disagreeable. Let's use that term. Right. And say, no, I think you're wrong. I think this is a bad idea, or this is a dumb idea. I personally feel, and this is my brand, I think it's yours, is that's a healthy debate, that to disagree, and that sparks conversation. That's not to say that I can't be disagreeable and not have my mind changed either.
I've worked in the Middle East for a few years recently, and I see this a lot in emerging markets, but I also see it in emerging spaces, that there's a lot of people, there's a lot of yes people on LinkedIn. The
culture of yes.
Right? So, I think a tip is, and this comes back to being authentic as well. Don't just like a piece of content because you're looking for favors from the creator, or you want to seem like you're agreeing with them because they'll think you're a fan. I say I do see this a lot in certain markets where the boss will post something and others will give it a like and say, wow, that's amazing, without actually any critical thinking at all. So this is what we were just saying. Be authentic, have the strength to, if you've got a slightly different point of view and you can back it up and make an argument, have the strength to say it and be part of the conversation rather than just kind of blindly going along with the rest of it.
And you know what? I hate that. I hate that. There's a lot of people I follow. There's a lot of people you follow. And there's a lot. And I'll use an example of somebody like probably everybody knows, Gary V. Yeah. Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Yeah. And a lot of things that he says, and he puts out a lot of shit, a lot of content, not a lot of shit, but he puts out a lot of content. And a lot of things that he says and the way he says it, I do like. Right. Yeah. It's a lot of good, positive messaging. A lot of things that he says, I don't agree with, but everybody's just like kind of falls over themselves about Gary V. I'd argue with Gary V, but like, I think people just kind of go along with him. And the same with Simon Sinek, who I love.
No, Simon there is Sinek. Certainly a cult of celebrity, which LinkedIn kind of helps along. I mean, if I go to LinkedIn right now, and I've never really understood this, you know, they know me. I've been on LinkedIn since forever. They know who my network is. They know what things I post. And then down on the right-hand side, there's a little box. Sometimes there's a people you should follow. In that list of people I should follow is Bill Gates. And it's like, do I really?
Why?
Does Bill Gates really need another follower? I mean, is that really the best recommendation you can come up with me, that I should follow Bill Gates? I mean, I'm sure he's interesting, but there's probably 1,000 people more interesting than him for me. So this is a big one. I truly believe this. Link out of LinkedIn to content that is hosted elsewhere.
Yeah.
Create your articles on LinkedIn, but if you're basically helping their SEO, not yours. And one day LinkedIn might not be around forever. So make sure that your content is hosted on a platform that you control, and link out of LinkedIn to somewhere else where your content lives. Even if people don't read it, if they don't only read the headline and like it based on the headline alone, long-term linking out of LinkedIn to another website that you own is a top tip for me.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I post all of my content elsewhere as well and link to it. And I post it on LinkedIn as well. You know the rule, post it everywhere and often. But like I do post it elsewhere where I do have more control over it. Like I'm not over the top. I'm not trying to like manage a brand over here like I'm Coca-Cola or anything, but I'm curious to see what topics resonate with people and how people interact with that. And, as we were talking in the last podcast, is like, why is the diversity in the metaverse or Web3 the least performing topic? When it seems to be a super interesting topic to us. And I think that there's a lot to be said about how you frame your content, which is a whole other topic.
There's a new trend to just clickbait and these weird, you write the clickbaity first sentence, and then people have got to click to show more, and it's, double spaced and
right. They're like, don't use more than this many characters, or do it this way, or post it that way, and that kind of constrains your messaging. And it's like, what are you trying to achieve? Then this gets, like I said, into the marketing aspects of it. Know your audience, know what resonates with your audience, and create content for your audience.
Yeah.
And be authentic.
Don't spam. This is my next tip.
Yeah, don't spam.
This means don't fill of your content full of irrelevant hashtags. Don't cut and paste messages. I get that your job is business development and you have to be given unrealistic growth targets. But if you're going to sell me something, do a little bit of research first. Don't just send me a note that says, I see that Pilote Media is in the marketing space. We've got a great deal for you.
Right.
That's not what networking, that's good old-fashioned sales. That's fine. And networking can help sales, but be a bit more grown up about it.
That's a sales thing, and that's a human thing. Is like, if you've got something to say, whether it's a sales message or a message, connect the dots. Connect whatever you have to say with something that's relevant to your audience in some way. Today, I talked about authenticity. Why is authenticity important? Why should it be important to you? That's just a general thing. If you're trying to sell something to somebody, if you have a service, don't just talk about why the service is great. Talk about why the service isn't relevant to the problem that your customer or your audience is having.
Yeah,
right.
You're an outcomes guy, so we
right. Exactly.
Technology hasn't helped the sales process. It perhaps was a little bit better in the old days. You say it's the difference. It's the difference between data and information. I still think you need the CRM systems still need to use some of that old school sales stuff, like what's the buyer's wife's name, how many kids have they got, how old are their kids, things right. that can small talk, that can start a conversation, that show that you're thinking about them as a person, not just the budget that they hold, which is how it kind of used to be done. It used to be you do regular visits and you touch base. Maybe it's still done in certain sectors. I guess it is if you're selling very high value products and you've got dedicated account teams and those types of things. Those relationships still exist. But certainly most of the stuff I get from LinkedIn, at least as cold approaches, don't have any of that level of research or understanding about my business and who I am. And they haven't taken even the time to have a look at the front page of my website, let alone understand me as a person.
We are in an age of, we have more data about people and companies than ever before at our fingertips, and nobody knows how to use it. It's the craziest thing. Right.
Yeah, we touched on that when Martin was on the program. We sort of said, B2B is doing this quite well. You've got systems like Salesforce and others that allow you to do account-based marketing and CRM, but CRM for consumers, B2C, doesn't really exist. I saw an interesting one yesterday. Someone in my network posted that they were sick and tired of getting irrelevant responses to their posts when they were asking for services. I mean, it's a bit like standing up in the middle of a conference and saying, "I'm a buyer," and then
right.
Yeah, you're going to get absolutely deluged. But it reminded me, my advice to him was, look, you search. LinkedIn search is a pretty powerful tool, especially with the filters.
Right.
So rather than sort of pushing out a message to the universe and saying, I want this, try searching for it, filter it by your first level connections, filter it by location, filter it however you want to filter it. And then once you've got that shortlist, reach out to that shortlist and ask them whether they can help you. And if they can't, they probably know someone who can. I mean, that's the value of the network, right? Why networks are powerful. So that was my last little tip. And I've got tons, and I'm going to flesh this out into a sort of a guide to LinkedIn for those who may be coming to it early or coming to it late.
I think it'd be a great to do that. It's funny. I'll give you a little anecdote and try not to reveal too much so that folks can't figure out who I'm talking about. So I work with or have worked with somebody in the past, and like I've worked for years in the advertising and marketing business here in Atlanta. So I have a huge network of marketers. I know everybody in town, or I know somebody who knows everybody in town, and you name it, video, any kind of marketing, you name it, vendor or service provider or any kind of marketing or advertising, branding, just because I did it for so long and I have friends in the business. So when I went to work for this company, they were struggling with marketing. So my function in this company wasn't marketing. So the marketing person who I'm friends with was had only ever worked in in-house marketing, and had never like gone to a networking event in town and like met any other marketers in town. So I was like, well, hey, let me introduce you to some people in town, and then you can leverage them in that network to find the people that you need, right? So she needs some people for video and some email marketing and some other things. So I made some introductions, and they went to lunch and everything. And then like later on down the road, she was like struggling, and she's like, oh, I can't find somebody to do this or that. And I'm like, well, why haven't you reached out to this person and said, hey, do you know somebody that can help me with this? And she's like, oh, I didn't realize that that's what that was for. I was like, well, I didn't like set you up to go have lunch with this person for nothing. Like I was trying to introduce you to the network. Like it didn't click that's what like, I was like trying to set you up to help you build your network so that you could create your own network connections so you could leverage that network too. And it just didn't click for that person. And I'm like, I guess if you've never networked before, but then I realized later that that person didn't really leverage like LinkedIn or anything.
But there are some cultural differences, and there are also some gender differences around networking. So
yeah, I think so. And that's what I was going to say.
Kind of a male thing.
I think you're right.
Americans are also a bit more extroverted. Networking events in America were always a little bit more free, and whereas some of the ones I've been to in the UK were a lot more prim and proper. And sort of people didn't really know what networking was or what the purpose of it was. I did real world physical networking before I did virtual or online networking.
Virtual networking.
And if you've ever been to a physical networking event, you know that what people do on LinkedIn, if you did it in a real networking event, people would just walk away from you.
Right.
Right. And I've had people do that. I've had people walk up to me in a physical networking event and gone, here's my card. Bye.
And you're like, what?
There was a thing called speed networking, which a friend of mine used to do as well, which you kind of stand in this line.
Yeah.
And you'd rotate like speed dating, and you'd rotate around the tables, and you'd have a 2-minute conversation, say who you were and what you did, and meet a whole bunch of people. Maybe we'd do a TikTok video on that. If LinkedIn was like physical networking, what it would be like. Oh,
that would be hilarious. We should totally do that. We need to get together in person sometime before the end of the year. I love meeting people in person.
Well, hopefully post-COVID, we'll get back to some proper physical networking events. I think there's a lot of value in them. I think the connections that I've made at physical networking events are a lot stronger than the ones I've ever made online. I met my wife at a networking event.
Did you really?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a long story.
I can't wait to meet her in person.
Save for another time. Right, I'm going to go and finish my packing because I'm going to leave the entertainment one. I'll put it in if I get this up, I'll put it on the show notes. There's a funny video I saw tonight, which was the guy who played Biff in Back to the Future. He's written a song about people asking him dumb questions about Back to the Future. Well,
he's probably been asked them the same question since 1986.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of fun. I'll just put that in there as something to end on. And next week,
always a pleasure.
Next week, I'll be dialing in from Melbourne, Australia.
You better have a different background. I need to see some Australia in the background.
I'm going to have my beanie on. I'm going to have my woolly hat on next week. It's going to be cold.
Oh, yeah, you'll be cold. Well, hey, listen, safe travels.
Yeah, man.
Always a pleasure talking to you. I look forward to talking to you early next Wednesday.
Yes, so that's the fun thing. Trying to find an overlap between when we're both awake is going to be an interesting thing. But we'll try it.
For you, my friend, I'll get up early. I'll do it.
All right.